ship left on the dock for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Welcome to Sacred Cow Shipyards.
It occurs to me that I may be speaking about currency more than a few times during the course of this particular episode. I promise you that some of it is for a good cause. Well, a little of it is for a good cause. You know what? I'm just going to keep going. Since some of y'all do not enjoy my abbreviated pantaloon episode, you may have missed the announcement that Sacred Cow Shipyards now has a merchandise distribution center on your little tiny ball of dirt. Yes, you heard that right. An awesome individual is now officially licensed to use his primitive laser systems to engrave the Sacred Cow Shipyards logo on a variety of materials. That variety changes on an almost weekly basis, so be sure to check back periodically and see what he's got right now. And speaking of mini trousers, another announcement in one of those was also that we now have YouTube memberships. For a variety of reasons, mostly due to Patreon's lacking security team now that they've fired all of them, and Patreon's apparent support of things that are not within the bailiwick of this channel to discuss, we are attempting to move away from them and now have opened up a YouTube membership. It's not like the Alphabet company is a whole lot better when you get right down to it, but they're at least not doing the things that Patreon might or might not, but probably is doing. So there's that, I suppose. Prices are the same. My cut of it is massively smaller, but that's my problem, not yours. So y'all pay the same price. The Discord connection is apparently a little more complicated. You have to connect your Discord account to your YouTube account. I don't know. I posted instructions for that particular tier. Have at it. And now on with the show. I feel it necessary to warn y'all that this episode is going to be chock-a-block full of audio artifacts, distortions, and other problems. The minions responsible for this have been reassigned to the exterior of the shipyards, where they will hopefully learn their lessons. But in the meantime, here you go. There are, on occasion, times that I wish I actually had a head. Get your minds out of the gutter. And the problem is, I don't know if I'd be using that head to beat a desk that I don't have into submission, or just rubbing it incessantly. Anyways, one of the reasons I am doing this episode is because the mighty USS Texas finally got dragged out of its slip and is currently being refurbished in a dry dock, which she desperately needed. Because she was one of the last proper dreadnoughts built, and she is the last one surviving, and since she was a proper dreadnought, the United States Navy bolted on some torpedo blisters onto her side, and maybe that process wasn't so great, and they've leaked, and the water's gotten in there and has corroded other things, and her hull is just an absolute fucking mess right now. So she's in a dry dock and being fixed, and that is awesome. In fact, since so many of you sophons have expressed displeasure at financially supporting this channel because I'm basically an asshole, and that's fine, both that I'm an asshole and that you've decided not to support an asshole. It's your own prerogative, it's your own choice, it's not a big deal. But if you have money that you would have spent otherwise on the channel and have not yet found a purpose for it, I would invite you to look below this video, because there should, assuming I pushed all the buttons right, be a fundraiser for the Battleship Texas Foundation to continue their ongoing preservation of the ship. And supposedly YouTube forwards all of the money to the charities in question. They don't even take a processing cut. I don't know if you believe them or not. If you don't believe them, you can donate directly to the Texas itself. I will endeavor to put a link in the description and one of those card things in the upper right-hand corner for you lazy slobs. Because yes, the preservation of these kinds of ships are very important because they are a functional portion of your history that you can actually go out and touch. They are literally an example of would that these walls could talk. This ship served in so many wars and did so many things, it's absolutely ridiculous. In fact, the YouTube channel named Fat Electrician did an entire episode about how the USS Texas did a quote-unquote gangster lean by flooding some of one side of the ship's compartments just so they could elevate the guns higher than the guns were intended to be elevated to hit targets farther away than the battleship was intended to hit. Yeah, dreadnoughts were kinda nuts. Which isn't actually the segue I was going for, but it's still useful anyways, because I'm still talking about this pudgy, sparky dude channel thing. He did an episode also on the USS New Jersey, which is actually why we're here. And the notable takeaway of the USS New Jersey in his mind is that it freedom baptized an entire fucking island. Yeah, apparently the Jersey, removed a North Vietnamese island from the map entirely. Just deleted it. Just bloop, no more island. Which is kind of the point of battleships. But that gives me yet another segue. Will I ever stop segueing? I have no idea. Because what I'm actually talking about today is this video from the official USS New Jersey YouTube channel talking about how they keep finding new damage control lockers on this ship. The ship, by all plans and blueprints and so on and so forth, was supposed to have 8 damage control lockers. They found 13 so far. They're pretty sure they haven't found them all yet. So, wow! But that's a whole conversation that we're going to have right now. And since this channel makes an industry of disappointing its audience, I would like to go ahead and get that right out of the way, right here and now. According to the official video from the official USS Battleship New Jersey channel, at about 6:25 or so, the concierge of the ship is talking about a variety of different damage control lockers they have on the ship, and how some of them have a number and then a letter. For example, and this is not the one he's talking about, I'm just using it as an example, you could have Repair 1 Alpha, Repair 1 Foxtrot, and Repair 1 Bravo. What do those mean, right? Well, he's right in some regard and terribly, terribly wrong in others. Repair 1 Alpha is, of course, the aft Repair 1. Now, you could have different conversations about whether or not that's a useful naming system for repair lockers, but that's not really what we're talking about right now. The Alpha, A, means aft, and Repair 1 Foxtrot, a guess, F means what now? Oh, right, forward. And for some reason, he convinced himself that Repair 1 Bravo, B, means between aft and forward? No. And he actually said that some listeners to the channel actually reminded him that it might be the beam repair locker, BEAM, Bravo Echo Alpha Mike, Repair 1 beam. And his response to that suggestion was, it's just silly. What? Beams are a thing on ships. They are, in fact, the beam of a ship is, in fact, the widest section of a seagoing ship. That's how wide the ship is at its widest point. And the beam of a ship is the middle part of a ship. If something is off your starboard beam, it's directly off the middle of the ship on the right side. That's what beam means. So yes, Repair Locker 1 Bravo is at the beam of the ship, the middle part of the ship.
Now, beam gets a little complicated when you're just simply saying forward, beam, and aft. You're subdividing the ship in thirds. So where in that third is the beam section? Hard to say. But yes, I guarantee you, repair locker number Bravo is in the beam of the ship. Although apparently the New Jersey had a repair locker 2 Alpha that was in the forward section of the ship. It just happened to be the aftmost repair locker 2. Which I guess brings me to the real point of this episode, now that I've gotten rid of the people who don't like it when I complain about things. So, first off, we have to remember what we are talking about. We are talking about, at the very least, classic dreadnoughts, which is a term that your nautical navies have basically abandoned, and then moving forward into the actual proper battleship era. These ships are literal ships of the line during your later technological development period of navies. They were literally designed to line up, line astern, and do broadside for broadside against other battleships of the line. And if they didn't have any battleships to go broadside with, they would cheerfully just yeet the ever-loving fuck out of anything smaller than them. Because their main guns would pretty much, total a smaller ship stem to stern. And also they had secondary guns and tertiary guns and probably quaternary guns too. These things were the king of the ocean. So naturally, they were somewhat accustomed to the concept of, we're going to take damage. How are we going to deal with that? And naturally, sailors being sailors, they understood that the Navy's blueprints and the Navy's plans were all good and well back in the drafting tables where they were being drawn. But in reality, they were probably not adequate, not even near adequate. So that brings us to the next point of my conversation. I'm not actually sure how long the United States Navy has had this tradition, but it's long enough, and the tradition boils down to the simple phrase to describe it: use it or lose it. And this covers the money that a given department or division or whatever on a ship has in a fiscal year. Every department and every division and every group and every team on a warship in the United States Navy every fiscal year is granted a finite fixed amount of money. If you don't use that money, you can't bank it. It's just gone. And worse than that, if you don't use it, some pencil-necked fucking nerd somewhere goddamn pushing an eraser around on a fucking sheet of paper somewhere in Washington, D.C., probably in the goddamn Pentagon because he's a slack-ass dickwad, will notice that you didn't spend all your money and conclude that, hey, you don't need all that money next time, so we're going to reduce your budget. Yes, you did in fact hear that right. If you are efficient with your spending of your money, the United States Navy will reward you by taking that money away from you that you didn't spend for the next budget cycle. Maybe not all of it, but some of it, which is a problem. So basically, they are literally incentivizing spending all the money you're budgeted and probably more just to be able to prove that you need more money. So sailors are accustomed to, at the end of the fiscal year, buying a shit ton of spares. Pretty much the easiest way to spend the money. You're going to need the spares anyways. You always need the spares. If nothing else, they're good trading material with other ships to get other things. So you just spend the money any way you possibly can. This is a use it or lose it concept, and this is why the military spending of your United States government is absolutely ridiculous. But that's a different episode, I suppose. So, if you're on a ship that is purpose-built to dish out obscene levels of damage to other ships out in the ocean and receive even greaterly obscene amounts of damage in return, where are you going to spend your money? All right, damage control. So it keeps you floating, right? So yeah, the battleship New Jersey realized that we needed to spend this money or lose it. So they just kept buying damage control equipment and materials and components and blah, 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 so on and so forth. And then they're like, crap, our damage control lockers are full. Our repair lockers are full. Where are we going to put this? Why don't we make more damage control lockers? Which leads me to my third point. I absolutely, totally, 190% believe that the sailors of the USS New Jersey made an additional 5 repair lockers that were not documented or logged or planned or anything on the warship. In fact, I would go so far as to say that I would honestly believe that they doubled the number of repair lockers, damage control lockers, whatever you want to call them, on the warship and never wrote any of it down. Why, you ask? Well, basically, nautical tradition. Sailors basically exist by 2 rules. It's easier to ask forgiveness than permission, and if you write it down, it's your ass. So, they don't, on either count. They just do it. Everyone on the ship knew it happened. Every single crew member knew exactly where all of those additional repair lockers and damage control lockers were. Even the commanding officer himself knew exactly where they were. As long as it wasn't documented, he didn't have to do anything. Because let me tell you how complicated it is to change the designation of a space on a warship. You just don't do it. U.S. Navy says, yea, verily, these blueprints are the ship, and you are not allowed to deviate from this plan. Well, fine, that's all good and well back in the Pentagon and back in the naval yards and back in the nice places where well, I guess you didn't have air conditioning back then, but you have a desk and you're not being shot at and someone isn't trying to sink your ship out from underneath you. When you're confronted with those very cold, very hard or wet realities, you do what you need to do to survive. So yeah, totally. The Jersey definitely made additional damage control lockers. They definitely did not write them down because then they definitely have to report them. And some pencil-necked asshole from God knows fucking where would show up going, why did you do this? We're gonna bill you for this. What's wrong with you? And rather than, keel hauling that fucking imbecile, they just didn't write it down. So, yeah, to me, this would be the cool thing about working on a museum ship. Doing the measurements of every space that you knew about, doing the math, and then realizing that there's some space between 2 spaces you did know about that you didn't know about. How do we get into it? You might have to actually cut through bulkheads. I don't know. Depends on whether or not the hatch is anywhere obvious at all. But these kinds of things used to happen because sailors used to understand that their job was to fight wars. Their job was to break shit and kill people, preferably before those other people could kill them. Now, it's really impossible to say what a sailor's job is. It's kind of ridiculous. And, I get that a modern Huey in your modern era is having a very hard time coming to terms with the fact that sailors did so much shit off the books. Honey, you have no idea. And that's all from Sacred Cow Shipyards. Please be advised that any ship left on the dock for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Have a nice day.